If your child has ADHD, you've probably done everything by the book. But what if the book is missing the most important chapter? Or it's outdated, or incomplete, or just plain wrong? Doctor's visits, behavioural questionnaires, specialist appointments. You jump through every hoop. And what do you get? A label and a prescription. But here's the real question. Why does your child have ADHD symptoms in the first place? Traditional ADHD testing isn't designed to uncover what's actually causing or exacerbating ADHD symptoms. It's built to diagnose and to medicate. But here's the problem. A diagnosis alone doesn't fix anything, doesn't improve anything. That's why functional lab testing is changing the game. So instead of just looking at symptoms, these tests dig deep into the hidden biological factors that could be making ADHD worse. So today, in this video, I am pulling back the curtain and breaking down the key differences between traditional ADHD testing and functional lab testing. I'm going to tell you about the 4 best functional lab tests for ADHD and how functional lab testing helps you create a personalized approach for your child. If you've ever walked away from an ADHD evaluation feeling confused, frustrated, or even hopeless, stay with me, because today we're going beyond the surface, and what you learn here could change everything for your child. I'm Dana Kay, a board-certified health and nutrition practitioner. I help parents uncover the underlying stresses that fuel ADHD symptoms so they can support their child naturally. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on strategies that could transform your child's health. Now, let's dive in. When parents suspect their child has ADHD, the first step is usually a visit to the pediatrician or a specialist. But what actually happens during traditional ADHD testing? Most ADHD evaluations focus on behavioral symptoms, not what's happening inside the body. So at this first visit, you probably get parent and teacher questionnaires like the Vanderbilt or Connors rating scale. You might also have clinical interviews where a doctor asks about symptoms, maybe watches your child's behavior for a bit, and in some cases, you might also have neuropsychological testing like IQ tests or attention span tests like the TOVA. These tests tell you how ADHD affects the brain. Now, these tests, they're super helpful because they give you a diagnosis, which is the first step to getting support, but they also fall short as well. And this is something that a lot of parents of kids with ADHD don't realize. For example, traditional ADHD testing only diagnoses ADHD. It doesn't explain why symptoms exist. Traditional ADHD testing also ignores gut health, nutrient deficiencies, and toxin exposure, and it typically only leads to symptom management or medication, instead of actually addressing underlying stresses. And look, I am not against medication at all. There's definitely a time and place for it. You're told medication is the only option. But what if I told you that ADHD symptoms could be dramatically improved without relying on medication first? That's where functional lab testing comes in. Functional lab testing goes deeper than traditional testing. Instead of, just saying, yes, your child has ADHD, it asks, why does your child have ADHD symptoms? These tests analyze nutritional deficiencies like low zinc, magnesium, and so forth. It looks at gut imbalances like bacterial overgrowth, yeast, or leaky gut. These tests also look at food sensitivities. Certain foods trigger inflammation, making ADHD symptoms worse. So these tests can help us identify which foods are causing issues. And these tests can look for toxin exposure like heavy metals, mold, pesticides. So instead of just managing ADHD symptoms, functional lab testing helps you correct the underlying issues, leading to long-term improvements. And here's what's really cool. Many kids who go through functional testing see huge improvements in focus, behavior, and emotional regulation without relying solely on medication. So let's go over the 4 best functional lab tests that every parent should know about. Now, there are hundreds of functional lab tests available, but in my experience, there are 4 foundation tests that are the best starting point. They look at the entire body without sort of casting the net too wide, making them more cost effective and targeted for families wanting real answers. Now, let's break down each test and why it's so powerful for kids with ADHD. First, there's the gut stool test. What if I told you that your child's ADHD symptoms might not start in the brain, but actually start in the gut? In fact, the gut produces approximately 95% of serotonin and 50% of dopamine. And also some of the bacteria produces GABA. And these are the same brain chemicals that control focus, mood, and emotions. So what that means is if the gut isn't functioning well, the brain won't either. Many kids with ADHD have underlying gut issues that contribute to their symptoms, like yeast overgrowth, which is also known as candida, bad bacterial overgrowth, parasites, and inflammation in the gut lining. So this test identifies parasites, bacteria, yeast overgrowth. It measures gut inflammation, digestion quality, and gut barrier function, and it detects metabolic markers related to ADHD symptoms. It's a stool test. We send the kit to your home, you collect the sample. Yes, I know that sounds gross, but then you send it back to the lab. The bottom line with this test is that if your child's gut isn't healthy, their brain will not function optimally. That's why fixing gut imbalances can lead to, major improvement in symptoms. The second test we regularly use is the Vibrant Wellness Food Zoomer test. That's ZOOMER. I know my accent can sometimes throw that word off. Food sensitivities cause chronic inflammation in the body, and inflammation affects ADHD symptoms. Many kids with ADHD are sensitive to gluten, dairy, soy, and other foods, but standard allergy testing often miss these reactions. Food sensitivity testing helps us determine which foods are triggering inflammation so we can remove them, improve gut health, and potentially reintroduce them later. Now, one thing I love about this test is that it tests down to the peptide level, which leads to the most accurate results. Many kids with ADHD also have leaky gut, which is a condition where tiny gaps in the gut lining allow digested food particles to enter the bloodstream, and the immune system attacks these food particles, leading to inflammation, brain fog, and behavioral symptoms. I'll add a link in the video description on a video around leaky gut. Make sure that you check that out to learn more about it. So, if we don't address the cause of the food sensitivities like the gut imbalances, new food intolerances will continue to appear. That's why this test is so important. It helps stop the cycle of inflammation and allows the gut to heal. This is a simple finger prick test that we send to your home. You take a small finger prick sample and you send it back to the lab. The bottom line to remember with this test is that removing food triggers can lead to dramatic improvements in ADHD symptoms, but without this test, you're just guessing which foods are the problem. Now, the third test I really love is the organic acid test, or OATS for short. ADHD symptoms are often linked to nutritional deficiencies, metabolic imbalances, toxin exposure, and the organic acid test gives you this detailed snapshot of how well the body is functioning at that cellular level. It looks for nutritional deficiencies, it looks at mitochondrial dysfunction, it looks at neurotransmitter imbalances, it also looks at gut health. It actually looks at over 65 metabolic markers, so it is a super helpful test. It's a urine test. We send the kit to your home, you collect the sample and send it back to the lab. The bottom line with this test is that it's one of the best bang for your buck tests because it gives you a big view of what's affecting your child's brain and body. And finally, the fourth test that we really like for kids with ADHD is the cryptopyrrole test. Some kids with ADHD have elevated urine cryptopyrrole levels, it can result in dramatic deficiency of zinc and vitamin B6. Listen to these symptoms. Symptoms of pie rolls include poor tolerance to physical or emotional stress, poor anger control, mood swings, aggression, sensitivity to light and sound, poor appetite, and poor short-term memory, just to name a few. I have a really great podcast episode on this topic, so I'll add the link to that in the video description. Make sure and check it out to learn more. Again, this is a urine test. We send the kit to your home, you collect a sample, and you send it back to the lab. The bottom line with this test is that many kids with ADHD feel calmer, more focused, less irritable and moody after optimizing zinc and B6 and bringing in some key antioxidants. But you won't know if they need it without testing. Now that we've covered the 4 best functional lab tests for ADHD, let's take a step back and compare them to traditional ADHD testing. What are the pros and cons to each? Let's break it down. There are 5 basic differences to traditional ADHD testing and functional lab testing. Number 1, traditional testing only diagnoses ADHD. It doesn't explain why. Most parents go through traditional ADHD testing and end up with an ADHD diagnosis and a recommendation for medication. What they don't get is an explanation for why their children are struggling. Functional lab testing can provide more of the answers to why. Number 2, functional lab tests uncover hidden biological imbalances that traditional testing doesn't look at. ADHD is often linked to whole body health issues the traditional tests completely ignore. For example, many kids with ADHD have gut imbalances, yet pediatricians never test gut health as a part of an ADHD evaluation. Functional testing looks at the full picture, identifying those imbalances that can be corrected naturally to improve symptoms. A third difference is that traditional testing uses broad, normal ranges, which can miss problems. Most conventional lab tests use wide reference ranges, meaning your child's results could fall into the normal category, even if they're not optimal for brain function. So for example, a child's zinc level might be within the normal range, but if it's on the lower end, they may still experience poor impulse control, anxiety, and irritability. Functional lab testing uses narrower, more precise ranges, which is allowing us to catch early imbalances and make adjustments before they become bigger issues. Another way traditional testing differs from functional lab testing is that traditional testing focuses on symptom management and functional testing focuses on long-term health. And finally, number 5, one of the biggest differences between traditional and functional ADHD testing is insurance coverage. Traditional ADHD evaluations are usually covered by insurance. Functional lab testing often aren't covered, though some may be eligible for HSA or FSA reimbursements. Despite its proven benefits, functional lab testing is considered, alternative or preventive care by most insurance companies. Here's what makes my blood boil. Insurance will pay for medications to manage ADHD, but won't cover testing that could prevent symptoms in the first place. How backward is that? That means parents who want a root cause approach to ADHD have to pay out of pocket for stool testing, food sensitivity panels, organic acid testing, and nutrient panels, even though these tests can lead to life-changing improvement in kids with ADHD. So sadly, yes, functional lab testing requires an upfront investment, but for many families, it actually reduces long-term costs by eliminating trial and error treatments that don't work, by reducing dependence on expensive ADHD medications, improving overall health, preventing future medical expenses. Many families find that functional testing pays for itself over time because their child's symptoms improve naturally, reducing the need for long-term medication and therapy. So now, you might be wondering, which is right for you? Traditional ADHD testing or functional lab testing for ADHD? The answer really depends depends on your goals. Are you looking for a formal diagnosis to qualify for school accommodations? Or are you trying to find and address the underlying stresses of your child's ADHD symptoms? If you need an official ADHD diagnosis for school accommodations like an IEP or a 504 plan, or if you need access to medication prescribed by a doctor, or if you want only insurance-covered therapy services, then traditional ADHD testing is the best place to start. But keep in mind, traditional testing won't tell you what's causing or exacerbating your child's ADHD symptoms, only that your child meets the criteria for the diagnosis. Now, on the other hand, if you want to know why and understand why your child has ADHD symptoms like this and address those underlying stresses, or if you're looking for natural alternatives, or if you want to reduce ADHD symptoms without relying solely on medication, then functional lab testing is the best option for you. Many families start with traditional testing for an ADHD diagnosis and then turn to functional lab testing for those deeper answers. This is probably the best of both worlds. Now, let's summarize because I know we've covered a lot in this video. Here are some key takeaways. Traditional ADHD testing is useful if you need a formal diagnosis for school accommodations or medication prescription. But functional lab testing digs deeper to identify gut imbalances, food sensitivities, nutrient deficiencies, and toxin exposures that impact ADHD symptoms. While functional lab testing aren't covered by insurance, they can lead to fewer medications in the long run, along with fewer doctor visits and lasting symptom improvement, making them a smart, long-term investment in your child's health. Now, you might be wondering, what's next? If you've been stuck in this cycle of that, trial and error, I was there too with my son all those years ago, this could be the turning point. Functional testing is about giving your child the future they deserve. If you feel that your child could benefit from these tests, or if you want to explore natural strategies to reduce ADHD symptoms, my team and I are here to help. The first step is to watch my Reduce ADHD Symptoms Masterclass. I'll add the link to that in the video description below, so make sure and check it out. It will give you proven strategies to reduce ADHD symptoms fast, sometimes in as little as a few weeks. For my son, he was like a different child in 3 to 4 weeks, whereas for other kids, it may be a bit longer. Again, that link is in the video description below, so check it out. Investing in the right testing today means giving your child the best chance at thriving naturally without, endless trial and error treatments. I hope this video has been insightful and helpful for you, and I hope now you really understand the pros and cons of both traditional and functional testing for ADHD. If it has been helpful, please share it far and wide. We really need your help to spread the word to parents that there are other options to support their children with ADHD, and you are a part of that when you share videos like this one. So hit that share button now and let's spread the word. Talk to you soon.